Sens fans, welcome to Season 4, Episode 11 of the Senstennial Podcast, a member of the Hockey Podcast Network. On this week's episode, we're a little higher in spirits as the Ottawa Senators have won 4 of their last 5 games and have seen some excellent personal performances in there as well. And that's where we'll kick things off, actually. So, Bennett, the Sens get 2 wins at the end of their West Coast road trip. They come home. Unfortunately, they lose to the Rangers, but they do bounce back, win against the Rangers, and the following night come home and win against the San Jose Sharks in pretty stunning fashion, if I do say so myself. So how have you felt during this little streak of, 4 wins in 5 games?
It's been a nice little change. The Sens had been, I think we all know, in something of a slump for much of November. So near the end of the month and the beginning of this month, being able to turn around and string a few positive results together has been nice. Beating Anaheim, LA, New York, and San Jose, all obviously, like with the exception of New York, who we split like a home and away with. It's been a slightly, it's been other like people in the bottom of the standings that we've been beating, but that's okay because it's something to build off of. Sens have outscored their opponents 17-10 in that 5-game span, which is good. The real standouts for me were some overtime wins in Los Angeles and New York, which the Sens looked really strong in, and you saw. Brady coming in clutch in the LA game. And was it him again in the games against New York as well? Or was that one Giroux? I can't remember now.
No, so Giroux potted the overtime winner against the Kings.
In
and
LA.
Then Tkachuk,
and
then Tkachuk did Rangers.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, those two have been 2 of the most standout players for the Sens so far this season. And in particular, the last 5 games, they've both looked very strong. And it's just been nice to see Sens turning it around, putting some solid results together, starting to see the usual suspects racking up the points again, which is what we like to see.
Yeah, I have been so happy with the Sens recently. It's been really special. You obviously mentioned Claude Giroux and Brady Tkachuk, but I think 2 players that cannot be forgotten are Thomas Chabot and Tim Stützle. Those 2 guys have had their fingerprints all over those games as well. Chabot has definitely becoming back to form, the Chabot we know and love, and not the guy who people wanted in the press box for, seemingly whatever reason. And I mean, Tim Stützle, what else can you say? Like, a superstar is there. He's shown up. He is the guy. And it's crazy that Brady Tkachuk is scoring at a higher pace than him. And, they both could be over 80-point guys. And that's so exciting to see. I was at a bar with my friends watching the New York game, and it was almost poetic when the solo act musician was playing Mr. Brightside and they scored the game winner. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. But that game, Brady showed that he is, arguably the best power forward in the NHL right now. And, not to be forgotten, and I'm sure Matt would have brought it up, is the goaltending. It's been phenomenal. It's been so good. And getting goaltending like this, we haven't gotten it for quite a while from a tandem. So Anton Forsberg, Cam Talbot, take a bow. Have yourselves a night.
And that's a good way to segue from those 4 or 5 games to talking about some of those personal performances. Now, Tim Stützle, yes, all kinds of praise could go to him. Thomas Chabot has looked better since coming back from his concussion, which at the time when he was coming back, I was like, I would have hoped that he'd stay out a bit longer because concussions are nothing to scoff at. But hey, he's come back from that and he's looked exactly like Sens fans wanted him to look or expected him to look coming into this season. So that's great for him. But yeah, I want to touch on Brady Tkachuk right now because, man, like you said, I think, especially with Tom Wilson, who's been on IR all season, I think Brady Tkachuk, you could say, is hands down the best power forward in the league. I mean, he's got 7 points in his last 5 games. He's up to 29 points in 24 games this season. Against the Rangers, he got that Gordie Howe hat trick and then topped it off with that OT winner where he outskated a back-checking Panarin, which to me is quite impressive to be able to hold him off, keep possession of the puck, and then put that thing 5-hole on Shesterkin, no less. And I know Shesterkin hasn't been having a Vezina caliber season, but it's still friggin' Shesterkin, and he was playing lights out that game.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of fun. Something I wanted to note that I don't think maybe stands out as much, but Brady Tkachuk is actually rocking a career high faceoff percentage at 54%. And normally I wouldn't point this out for wingers, but Brady commonly takes faceoffs on the left side of the offensive zone on power plays. And I think that that's partially contributing to why Ottawa's having more offensive zone time on their power plays and why their power play is sitting at 9th in the league right now at 25.8%. Obviously, 3 goals against the Sharks on the power play really helps that number, but the Sharks were coming into that game with almost a 92% penalty kill. So it's not like they were, a bad team shorthanded. They were quite good on the penalty kill. So huge performances from Brady Tkachuk in those regards, and I think that cannot be understated. And I know you've touched on Brady Tkachuk, and Bennett, I don't know if you'd like to touch on Brady Tkachuk as well, but by all means, go for it and what your thoughts are.
Nothing much to add other than to say that he's starting to look like a steal at 4th overall in the 2018 draft. I know that lots of people doubted that pick, but he's absolutely proved his doubters wrong. And with 12 goals and 29 points in 24 games, he is having, without a question, the best season of his career, and is primed for a breakout year. I mean, his what was his highest point total before this season?
I think it was last year. He had 67 in like 79 games.
Yeah, that's right. He had 67 points last year. I think right now, he's on pace to blow through the ceiling of that. So great to see.
Yeah, and the other player I wanted to touch on was Claude Giroux, the timeless wonder. And, when Ottawa was set to sign Claude Giroux, I think everyone was like, he's going to be a solid top 6 guy. He is getting close to 35 years old. Nobody's expecting him to be prime Claude Giroux. He has been like prime Claude Giroux. I don't know about you guys, but holy crap, he has impressed me a ton. His offensive game has not deteriorated at all. It's been better than it was with Philadelphia last season. His defensive play has been quite decent as well. I mean, I don't know what's not to love with him. That move he pulled in OT against LA was great. He's got 5 points his last 5 games. We can get to that big clap bomb that he got against the Sharks as well. I was fortunate enough to be in the arena for that moment, and wow, that was quite a moment, and I'm so happy I was there. But I also want to point out another thing, going back to the faceoffs. Claude Giroux's also sitting at a career high at faceoff percentage with 62%. And Claude Giroux's been in the league for what, like 16 years or something?
And he's really good at faceoffs.
He is indeed. So to be having a career high in his faceoff percentage when he's 35, it really reminds me of Daniel Alfredsson. And I know totally different players in terms of what they mean to the Ottawa Senators as a whole, the legacy and all that. But what I mean by that is Daniel Alfredsson produced his best when he was in his 30s with the Ottawa Senators. And those 06-07 to like 08-09, like that time frame, he was in his mid-30s. And that's exactly where Claude Giroux is. And I think that's very interesting. And if the Sens do take a next step, I believe that Claude Giroux will be a huge, huge reason why that roster is able to take a step forward. Now, I'll end my tangent with basically saying it remains to be seen if the rest of the roster and the weaknesses that they have can be fixed by Pierre Dorion. We've had some injuries, which we'll get to, but I think that's really impressive. And yeah, Matt, what have you thought about Claude Giroux so far this season?
I'd like to touch on Brady for a second, and then I'll get to Claude. But I think one of the crazy things at the start of the season was The Athletic, I believe it was Scott Wheeler, was going over a redraft of the 2017 draft, and was Brady's
2018.
It was 2018. I keep going back and forth with them. Anyways, he redrafted the 2018 draft, and Brady was the first overall pick in his opinion there. And I think a lot of people questioned that, but you could see why he would be taken in the top 5. And now you're seeing why he should be taken first overall. I think Svechnikov is an excellent player. I think Rasmus Dahlin is an amazing player. And if Dahlin went ahead of Brady, I have no problems with that. But for me, what Brady brings to this team, what he brings night in, night out, is intensity, power, and like showmanship. He's the reason some people go to the CTC. They make that half-hour drive out to the old Canada, Ontario. He is worth the price of admission every night. And that Ranger game was the epitome of what Brady Tkachuk is. We had two disallowed goals in that game, and that just felt like a stereotypical Sens loss. They weren't going to fight out of it. They're facing the adversity, and it just felt like the shift was happening. And I'm sitting there with my friends at the bar, and we're like, they have to fight it. They have to do this. If they're going to turn their seasons around, it has to be tonight. And against God tier Shesterkin. And I mean, Brady was amazing. But going back to Giroux, I've seen the exact same Alfredson point about him as well. He's been an amazing Senator so far. And I know it might be early to say, but I wouldn't be surprised if he signs an extension after his contract is up. He's going to finish his career as a Senator for sure, but it just looks like he's still got so much left in the tank. And it obviously goes back to the point when we were talking about older players, Nick Holden, for example, being a bit of a replacement level. Claude Giroux is an elite talent, and he has everything you want in a player, and he's still got it at 35. I would not be surprised if he's a player that goes till he's 40.
I like it. I like that. I mean, he's also a guy who's being paid $6.5 million. And I really think that at his current production level, if he was not in his 30s, he'd be getting paid like upwards of 8.5, 9 million. So that's another thing that is nothing to scoff at, is that contract is good value for what he's bringing to the table. And if he can keep that up, and I mean, even in his 3rd season with the Sens, if he's regressed and he's still on pace for like 60 points or something like that, that's still really good for a guy who would be about 37 years old at that point. And yeah, I could totally see him signing an extension for a cheaper amount to stay in Ottawa, and especially if they see some postseason success, because I know that's very important to him. But excellent player, and I don't think there's much else you can add to that. But Bennett, if you have any other comments you want to add about Claude Giroux, go for it.
Yeah, just to say that in my wildest dreams of how Giroux would perform as an Ottawa Senator after we signed him, I never thought he would be this good. I thought he would be good, but I did not think that we would be getting the performances we've been getting from him. He has 23 points in 24 games, so he's just shy of a point per game pace. He has been a leader on this team, scoring lots of goals as well as timely goals and game-winning goals in some cases, goals to change the course of a game, which make a statement, like the statement that he made against San Jose on Saturday night. That breakaway slap shot goal that he scored was one of the goals of the season for me. I think it's such an underrated power move to opt for the slapper in those situations. You don't see it very often. Feels like players these days, and this is me putting on my old man hat here, old man yells at Claude kind of thing. But I feel like most of the time players go for the deke in these situations. You don't see as many. If you see a shot, it's typically like a wrist shot aiming for one of the corners, which is great, and you love to see that too. But there's just something. It just gives big dick energy to just walk in and just slap shot it in from like 20 feet out. Just no pretense, no deke, just throw it in there, and I thought it was awesome. And his what was his reasoning afterward? Who did he say?
He told Shane Pinto
I told Pinto
he gets a breakaway, he's going to take a slap shot.
Yeah. And I mean, like obviously that's just like a funny, story or something, but like there is something to be said for, you have a young player like Pinto getting their start in the league, playing with a certified, NHL legend like Giroux, and getting to like have fun and joke around and see him do cool stuff, and then just be like, yeah, man, that goes out to you. Like it's just it really helps build character and camaraderie within the team, and I think that's so important, and something that this team has already been doing well, even when they haven't been playing well. But seeing that dovetailing with when there's an upswing in performances is also just really nice to see.
Hockey fans, light the lamp this winter with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. New customers can bet just $5 pre-game moneyline on any NHL team to win their game and get $150 in free bets if they do. If that wasn't enough excitement, you can turn small bets into bigger payouts with same-game parlays. Combine multiple bets like which team will win, how many goals will be scored, and more for your shot at an even bigger payout. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now using promo code THPN. Bet $5 on any NHL team to win their game and get $150 in free bets if they do. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code THPN.
So before the break, we were talking about Claude Giroux, that big clap bomb he scored against the Sharks. And I wanted to touch on the atmosphere of that game, because as I was saying earlier in the episode, sitting in that crowd, I was with one of my good buddies, and you could just feel it. At the start of that power play, especially when Hamonic's stick broke, it was very tense. The atmosphere, everyone was kind of quiet, and it was like, oh, great, this isn't good. San Jose is going to score. Slowly, as, Hamonic blocks a couple shots, Forsberg makes some stops. The team is doing everything they can to keep San Jose to the outside. I talked about it with someone on Twitter earlier today. Tyler Mott even took Hamonic's broken stick and kind of pushed it into like the high slot. And that actually prevented Timo Meier from being able to kind of push down the middle of the ice and try and get a high danger shot away. So that was really smart on Tyler Mott's part. But that whole time, as the penalty kill, the first one expires, people start cheering. Then the second penalty expires. People are getting even louder. And it was just building and building. And when Thomas Chabot, kind of puts pressure on the player, and then the player tries to whip it up to his teammate on the boards, Tyler Mott gets it. Trip or not, I don't even care. He taps that over to Claude Giroux, and everyone was elated at this point. Claude Giroux could have fired that thing 300 feet into the air, hit the netting. People would have still been on their feet clapping. But people went from just applauding the beautiful penalty kill and the performance of Forsberg to absolute elation when Claude Giroux just clap bomb scored. And I think when he winded up and he took that slap shot, Capo Kakinen was like, what the heck is going on? And that thing is in the back of the net before he knows it. And I immediately knew, I'm like, the next episode, that's going to be our thumbnail, because that was a hell of a goal. The roof blew off the CTC. It has not been that loud in all the games that have been there this season since the home opener. And I would argue in that single moment, it was probably the loudest I've seen the CTC this season. And I just wanted to say that, because that was one of those moments when you go to a regular season game and you're like, holy crap, that felt like a playoff game that I just went to. So I just need to get that out there and rant on that, because it was a ton of fun, and I'm glad I got to be there for it. And man, hopefully Claude Giroux can keep giving us moments like that, because that slap shot was nasty.
And it was a big contrast to the game against the New York Rangers on Wednesday of last week, where you were hearing fire DJ chants. There's lots of heckling of, like the Sens players in the section that I was in. A lot of very frustrated fans, people feeling jaded and, unhappy with, how the Sens were playing and how a lot of individual Sens were playing. So to contrast that with with the performance on Saturday night and the atmosphere that you've described, Matt, is so interesting. It's sort of been the two halves of the Sens season, like when we've been playing well and we have all of these star players that we basically didn't have before showing up. It can be exciting and amazing and really, really, really fun. And when the performances haven't been good and you're seeing the same, bad decisions and poor systems that have led the Sens astray in the last several years, the pitchforks come right back out. And I think it's just been that kind of season for the Sens. Like fans are on edge and expecting to see real progress, and have been flip-flopping, for better or for worse, kind of like based on single performances. And that really has been sort of the way that this season has gone so far. And quite a contrast indeed.
It's one of those things that with the game against the Rangers, the first game when we're playing Halak, who it was almost destined that we were going to lose to a goalie who hasn't won all season. And that was the loss that we were all expecting. We've had it all season. What's to change? And I found with the Rangers game, that was such a pivotal moment for the Sens and their identity, is that they scored with an empty net. And after fighting all of that adversity, and they finally do it. And then against the San Jose Sharks, they were down twice and came back and stormed back. And Bennett, you made a really excellent point about a slap shot on a breakaway that I've been thinking about. Is those are genuinely one of the hardest shots to stop from that in close. And it almost would have been a miracle for Kakinen to save it. Because I'd more expect somebody faking a slap shot going to a deke than actually taking a slap shot. So it was just one of those moments that the fans in the stadium deserved it. And it was really nice to see everybody just losing their mind. And I was playing games with some of my family, and I had the game on in the background, and I could feel through the television the excitement and the cheers, like just ready to erupt. So I walked over to the TV and I'm watching it, and I saw that little poke check that Mott got it up. And I was like, oh my God, what's Claude Giroux going to do? And he did not disappoint. Let me tell you that much. It's one of those veteran moves that, you simply love to see. What a win.
And on that note, let's talk about goaltending, because both of Ottawa's goaltenders have played really consistently well during this stretch. I guess Forsberg's only played one game, but Talbot, I think, has played quite well. He's sitting at a 919 save percentage this season.
An official
Forsberg is at a
betting partner
908,
of the
but
NHL.
honestly,
You're in for
with
the
how the
season of
team
a
was
lifetime.
playing in
New
October,
customers can
November,
bet $5
I don't blame
on
him for
any
being a little
team
bit
and get
lower.
$200 in free bets if they
Anyway,
win.
still both playing really
Personally,
well, and
I'm
Matt,
probably
I'll jump over to
slamming
you
Shane
first as the
Pinto at plus
goalie expert on the
3,500 for
show
the
here, and
Calder
what you've
odds,
thought
but
about both
that's
Talbot and
just me.
Forsberg so far.
If that wasn't enough excitement, you can turn small bets into bigger payouts with same-game parlays.
A lot of things about
Combine multiple
both
bets,
of those guys.
like which team will win, how many goals
start,
will be
I
scored,
Talbot
and more
looked
for your shot at an even bigger
not as
payout.
engaged.
DraftKings
he
is
seemed
safe,
a little
secure,
lazy in some
and
of his
reliable.
movements, but
You
he
can deposit
quickly,
and withdraw your money whenever you
shied
want.
that away. It was probably
Download
he's
the
coming back
DraftKings
from an
Sportsbook
injury
app
that
now.
is
Use
extremely
promo code
uncomfortable,
THPN.
and he's probably
Bet
doing things a little
$5 on
differently.
any NHL team to win
I
their
have
game
found
and
he's
get
been
$200
a calm,
in free bets if they
soothing
do.
presence in the net.
That's code THPN
making the saves that you need him
at
to,
DraftKings
and
Sportsbook,
stopping some of the
an
things
official
that you
sports betting
shouldn't
partner
expect
of
him
the
to.
NHL.
And Anton Forsberg last game. What can you say? San Jose didn't have a lack of chances. It wasn't a 20-shot game. They put 37 shots on him, and he finished the game with a 956 save percentage. That's nothing to scoff at. He has been a very good goaltender this year. I think he's just been marred with some bad luck when it comes to the games he's been playing in. Talbot has won most of the games on this little run we're going on. And, you hope to see both of them just continuously working together as a tandem and, getting us into a better position, because right now we're sitting 8 points out of a wild card position. And, could it happen?
That's what we're all hoping for. Bennett, how have you felt about the goaltending?
Yeah, it's the goaltending has been a strength this season, and it's been a while since you've been able to say that as a Sens fan. You rattled off the numbers that Talbot and Forsberg have been putting up. Overall, the Sens save percentage is 903 against a league average of 900, so they're just a shade above, which is good at the 24 game mark. Can't complain about that. That we're getting essentially league average goaltending. When the Sens have been losing games, it has for the most part not been the goaltenders that are letting them down, which is important because there's nothing more demoralizing to a team than when you're playing well, but your goalie is just not making saves that you should expect NHL goalies to make, and then you end up losing because of it. There were plenty of games like that last season and the season before, so knowing that if the Sens are losing games this season, it is far more often than not due to defensive breakdowns and things which feel a little bit more fixable than just having, the guy that should be stopping shots just not stopping shots. So that's
and we've been there.
yeah, we've been there, and I'm sure that it makes a difference for the players on the ice and in the locker room as well to know that they have guys who have their backs when they're in net. And, then it's up to them to just try and minimize chances. But yeah, so that's been very good to see.
And one thing I'll leave us on with this topic is because I love my analytics. One of the analytics for goaltenders that I really like that Hockey Reference does is the quality start percentage. And essentially, this is like what average of games your goalie starts that they put in a winning effort for the club. And essentially, like, the game is not on the goalie. This is what it really records. How well did a goalie perform in their starts on average? So with Anton Forsberg, it's sitting at a 0.615%, which means about 61.5% of the time, Anton Forsberg is giving quality starts. And with Talbot, it's at an even higher 80%. 80% of the time Talbot has started, he has given the Sens a winning chance, like a chance to just win the game. And that is all the Sens need out of their goaltending. And just to put that in perspective, for this stat, 50% is average. So above 50% is good. Above 60% is good. That is what you'd want for your starter. To have, like, and I know Ottawa doesn't really have a discernible starter. I think Talbot's kind of taken that role just with how he's played. But to have your 1A have an 80% in that quality start and your backup have a 61.5, that is very good. And if they can keep giving Ottawa quality starts like that, and the defense can take a step, I know in the last couple games, Zaitsev has looked like an actual NHL depth defenseman, which is very much necessary. And we'll get to that in a second here because Ottawa has really dealt with some big defensive injuries. Like we mentioned earlier in the show, Thomas Chabot was dealing with concussion symptoms and, was out for a little while. Zub already missed a bit of time earlier this season. Now he's out again for about 3 to 4 weeks with his broken jaw. JBD's out for a month. You've had Holden and Hamnick have to take games off for maintenance, just, bruised up, whatever DJ Smith likes to say when the guys need a game off. They have dealt with a lot of injuries on their defensive core, and that has been just devastating for them, I think, and having that inconsistency on your blue line. But I'll flip it over to Matt first. The latest injury of Zub now being out for 3 to 4 weeks. I believe Drager was the first one to come out with it. How did you think that news will impact the Ottawa Senators going forward here?
I hate to say it's a bit of a backbreaker, but it is, because Zub is an extremely solid defenseman. And when you don't notice defensemen, that's a good thing. I mean, aside from your offensive defenseman, but Zub plays a very defensive style, and it's a very welcomed thing on this team. Losing him shows the lack of depth we have. Losing JBD showed the lack of depth we have. Then the Shabbat injury and so on and so forth. It's just, it keeps hearkening back to the fact that Pierre Dorion should have made a move for a quality defenseman in the offseason and didn't. And we're here once again talking about the fact that he didn't, and that it's a problem. It's unfortunate to see Zub go down again, because I think he was sort of getting his feet back under him from the previous injury, but now he has to take off a month because he got hit in the jaw with a shot. And it's really unfortunate to see, because this team needs all hands on deck, and we've lost very important hands already this season.
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's a big blow. Artem Zub is the guy who you put with Thomas Chabot. You could put him, I know he hasn't played with Jake Sanderson much this season, but you could put him with Jake Sanderson. You could put him with Brandstrom. Like, he really just fits in any of your right defensive spots to play alongside, a guy like Thomas Chabot, who it's nice to have that stay-at-home guy like we always refer to. Erik Karlsson had Mark Mathot. Zub is kind of like that for Chabot. So it's too bad that he's gone out with an injury 3 to 4 weeks. And yeah, I mean, Bennett, I don't know if you want to add anything on the defensive woes that the Sens have had, especially on the injury front.
Yeah, the injuries have been tough, and it has marred what has been, in some ways, a very important step forward year for the Sens defense, with a couple of small but important caveats. We're seeing elevated play from Thomas Chabot since he's returned from his injury. So we know how good he normally is and how good he's been the last few games. And we know that's like the normal Thomas Chabot. We've seen a remarkable first season from Jake Sanderson up until this point, who has just been a marvel, and better than most of us would have expected him to be in his debut season with the Sens. So that's been a huge bright spot on the back end. We're seeing Erik Brandstrom finally putting his game together. He's been used in mostly in like a third line role this season, but that's allowed him to showcase his puck moving talents in a more sheltered area, and his Corsi percentage at even strength is on one of the best on the team. I think he's right up there after like the holy trinity of Giroux, Brady, and Tim Stützle. But of course, like, there's still like some familiar failings, mainly in the form of Zaitsev and Hamonic, who can flatter to deceive at times, and show the players that at one point they were in their careers. But to see a few decent games from them and think that that's the Sens defense sorted, that's the devil talking, and you need to not let him bring you in, because these guys are not NHL defenders anymore. And if you're banking on them being the ones to lead you to, like a playoff berth, it's like you will be disappointed. So, if Bernard Docker is healthy and if Zub is healthy, we prefer to see those guys not playing or playing in reduced roles. I think like Hamonic can, have some success in like a third line role. He has some utility still. I'd still prefer to see basically anybody else playing in that position, but Zaitsev really should not have any role with this team if everybody's healthy. So I think we've seen some strides from the pieces that will be the important pieces for this back end moving forward. Sanderson, Chabot, Brandstrom. This is the future of the Sens defense. And other than that, it's just the target for this off season, or if it can be sorted into season, that's something good, is just to shift the dead weight and get some Zub 2.0, 3.0 in those positions, guys who are just capable, inoffensive, defenders who are able to elevate their more talented line mates and prevent fires from breaking out. And that's all you really need.
And one player who I think I kind of want to touch on, because I think that they're going to be available in the trade market if they're not already, is the Vancouver Canucks Luke Schenn. And I know we've talked about him on the podcast before. He's been brought up on us on our Twitter account a couple of times. But, he's a right-handed defenseman. He's 33 years old, but he's making near league minimum this year. He's got about 8 points, 25 games. He's nothing offensively to write home about, but his analytics defensively are very similar to Zub's. And no, he might not be a replacement for Zub. That's not what you're going to find on the trade market. It's going to be hard to find. But if a depth defenseman like this is available, not sure what draft capital the Canucks will want for him, but that's a guy that you pick up the phone, you call the Canucks, and you're like, hey, listen, interested in this guy. What are you asking for him? Just get a gauge. And, if you're Dorian, don't overplay your hand. Don't make it seem urgent. You just inquiring about a depth defenseman. See if they're asking for way too much because they know you're dealing from a position of weakness, then fine. Hang up the phone and just stand pat. But I think if this guy's available and you can give up, like, say, a third rounder for him, I think you have to do that because you're bringing in a guy who can give you defensive stability and still chip in every now and then on offense, which is exactly what Zub gives you. So that's kind of my take. I'm sure there's other defensemen out there. I've seen some people say that they just like to see Ottawa get a defenseman, left-handed, right-handed, whatever, if they can play defense. And I think that's totally fair. Asking price is likely lower for a left-handed defenseman. But yeah, that's just some thoughts I want to throw out there. And if you guys have anything you want to add to that, then be my guest.
Yeah, it's only recently in the last decade decade or more that the right hand, left hand pairing needs to be a thing. I would be happy if Jake Sanderson played with Thomas Chabot because they're our two best defensemen. I'd be okay with that.
Yeah.
But with Luke Schenn, it kind of sounds like from the 32 Thoughts podcast that the Canucks are going to be blowing things up. And that's a guy you're probably not keeping around when you're thinking of getting rid of guys like Brock Besser. And, there was even talk about what's going to be going on with Thatcher Demko. So it's definitely a possibility, but if you can find a good value defenseman that is left-handed, go get him. Our depth is not very good. We've seen how it handles stress when Zub is gone and Chabot is gone, and it's not good. So yeah, as you said, we're dealing from a position of weakness, and we continue to do so from our lack of moves in the off season. But the team is turning a page, and now you have to back it up with improving the people that are on the roster.
Yeah, 100%. But I think that's kind of it for the episode, guys. And we'll get to, as the next month goes by, I'm sure we'll hear trade talks heating up. It's been too quiet on the trade front this season. I think a lot of teams, especially in the East, don't know if they're in or out of the hunt yet. So I think if we're going to see any trades, it'll likely be from players in the Western Conference on those teams that are looking out of the picture, more or less. But thank you for listening or watching us do this episode. Really appreciate it. You can find us on Twitter at Senstennial, Instagram at the Senstennial Podcast, Reddit at the Senstennial. We're on Discord as well. You can find us on Facebook if you're still on there. So thank you so much. Really appreciate you. Go Sens, go. Hopefully they can keep this thing going.
Have a good night, everybody.
Hit the music.